Welcome to the program. This is AM Prime here on WESN. Let's tell you what's happening in this edition of the program. We will be talking moments from now with Mr. Alan Stewart. He's the director of TEMA, that's the Tobago Emergency Management Agency, having to do with the flooding that we've been experiencing over the last couple of days. They say it's going to end sometime in a few hours from now, but let's see what happens. What has it done in Tobago in particular? We're also talking with Dr. Asante Van West Charles LeBlanc. She's the head of the Cancer Society in Trinidad and Tobago. We're talking about cancer awareness in this time. We'll hear what she has to say, where we are with this particularly devastating illness. And also, we're talking with Mr. Anthony Roberts. He's the chairman of the Elections Supervisory Committee in the ruling party, the People's National Movement. They're into party elections days from now. They are candidates, they are slates. What's the process? It's a 2-day process, and somebody says, well, how come general elections in a country happen on one day, but elections in a political party go over 2 days? And one assertion is that it takes 3 days before you know the results of that. We'll talk with him about that and other matters having to do with the elections in this party. We also take a look around the region. We have several stops to make, time permitting, and that and more on the program. We'll take a break. We'll come back shortly with the agenda. Stay with us.
What's the best way to grab the attention of viewers?
Please exercise more patience. You have to be kidding me.
Doing what we do best.
I'll say at the very least it's a conspiracy of laziness against the people.
Join me, Keaton Shaw.
And me, Sean Michael Small, for Talking Point.
Weekdays from 8 a.m. to 9:30 a.m.
We go in depth on the trending issues and engage the most controversial newsmakers
as we get them to account to the people for their actions.
You can't go to the government with nothing. You can't go to cabinet with an empty hand, with a wish.
I'm glad that we're having this a sober, mature discussion.
In the present situation, I expect a continuation of the chaos.
Join us for the discussion, Mondays to Fridays,
only on WESN,
the content capital.
The best for your baby is at thebesttoys.com. From the best strollers, car seats, baby carriers, high chairs, booster seats, rockers, jumpers and bouncers, walkers, baby blankets, feeding accessories, bathtubs. Visit us in-store at Forces Flagship McLean. Shop online now at thebesttoys.com. Order via call or WhatsApp at 332-BABY. And remember, we have the best toys at the best prices.
All right, so let's just tell you this. Trinidad and Tobago has been affected by adverse weather conditions as well as a tropical wave. It's called 91L. The weather conditions elevated to its alert to orange on Wednesday. On Thursday, Trinidad and Tobago, the riverine flood alert was updated to yellow as a major water courses in the country were nearing 80% capacity and rising. Spring tides and additional rainfall will keep the river levels elevated for some time still. Well, Mr. Alan Stewart, he's the director of TEMA, that's the Tobago Emergency Management Authority, and he's in charge of things like these. So we're getting a sense from him as to what transpired in the sister island over the last couple of days. Mr. Stewart, thanks for talking with us. Let's hear from you.
Good morning, Andy. It's quite a while we have not done this. Very good morning to you and all of Trinidad and Tobago.
Thank you very much. Same to you.
Well, Probably I heard your questions and your concerns as to how the island would have been affected by the passage of 91L, Invest 91L. Certainly we have got the brunt of it in the sense that we have seen that over the passage of time, over the past 48 hours or so, we have had over 256 reports of incidents occurring across the island. I must point out, however, that most of these reports during this event is that of landslides. What does that say for us in the recovering process or the reconstruction process? It means that it's going to be very expensive, it's going to be very difficult where landslides are concerned, especially when they are impacting residential properties. And a number of residential properties across the island have been impacted to the extent whereby, based on the preliminary damage assessment, we have seen over 76 reports of landslides affecting both residential properties and public spaces. During this process, these landslides become very disruptive to the normal flow of things, in the sense that schools have been out for 2 days, as we can definitely know that it requires, the mopping up requires us to do what you call sanitizing these areas that has been impacted. We're talking about the major thoroughfares, and these major thoroughfares lend itself to areas on the northern side of the island and also the eastern side of the island, impacting secondary schools to the extent where the executive, based on the wisdom presented, they recognize that it's good to take school out for a while the roadway, the network has been cleaned up to avoid the hazard or the sub-hazard that are associated with the residue of landslides and mudslides that are on the roadway.
All right, so let me see if I know my geography good when it comes to Tobago. So the northern side is going, say, towards Bloody Bay and in that area, and the eastern side is going towards Roxborough and further north, Castara and so on.
Excellent. Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. Yeah. So these are the phenomena coming out of this event itself. And one of the things we can quickly say and agree upon is the onset of climate change and what it is doing to small island developing states. This is a Caribbean challenge as to how governments across the Caribbean deal with these weather phenomena, in the sense that climate variability and climate change is taking a toll on our existing infrastructure. It means that we have to go back to the drawing board, look clinically as to how we do our engineering to ensure that what is evidently going to be a part of our lives, that we can cope with these hydrometeorological events in a particular way. I mean, as we know it, that the system itself, before reaching Trinidad and Tobago, was not a storm. But nevertheless, the impact of it is very telling, in the sense that to the coffers it's going to be costly. To the disruption of services, it has taken that toll. The road network. What we will see happening going forward is that you will have, as the amount of rainfall that we have experienced over the period, slope instability will become a strong feature, where you will see landslides, fallen poles, fallen utility lines popping up here and there. We have seen in areas in the southwest of Tobago, we didn't speak about that, where they experienced a serious flash flooding over the past 2 days. So yesterday we had it, and the day before we had it. What we saw happening is that little phenomenon where the high tide influence or prevent the receding of the flood waters to some extent, where the tide is just around the midday time of the day. I think the peak of it was just around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and therefore you have these heavy rainfalls that are taking place, and we saw flash flooding in the areas of Crown Point, Canaan, in the area of Black Rock, and even Scarborough. So we have had it, and our game plan going forward is to do the necessary damage assessment, needs analysis. We had the Chief Secretary would have led the Tobago Disaster Management Committee in an emergency session last evening, and where he would have described his IAP for the rest of the day, which includes ensuring that those persons who are impacted, residential properties and otherwise, are well assessed to the extent where some persons had to be relocated. 7 families, let me repeat that, 7 families had to be relocated, and the necessaries are going in to ensure that the recovery process takes place very swiftly where these families are concerned. I know coming to the heel of the first in the month in the new financial year, it is going to be a challenge somewhat, and therefore these are some of the challenges that executive will have to be faced with in terms of the policy group as to how they treat with these going forward. Where the coffers are concerned, it's going to be a very costly one, impacting already the what is happening with the budgetary allocations to the Tobago House of Assembly. But these are matters I believe that the chief can speak towards, but certainly it has its repercussions onto how the recovery process works during such an event.
Okay, you reminded us of something there, a phenomenon, an acknowledgement that had been made. I think it's somewhere in the UN system. You talked about us being among these countries in different parts of the world known as the Small Island Development States. They used to call, developing states, they called it SIDS. One got a sense that the awareness of about this came about because of the consciousness of the coming destruction from climate change and so on. The question is, to what extent things have been put in place to address the possibilities that we're dealing with now, the eventualities of such things like these natural hazards, and preparation for them, taking into account the vulnerabilities that were identified associated with these countries, including us, described and determined as SIDs.
Yeah, the Small Island Developing States, which Trinidad and Tobago is part of, the UN, as you know, only recently in South Korea, 162 countries met and was part of that group, and we spoke about what we have been doing over the past year, so we are able to share our experiences. You recall in 2004, what occurred in the north of the east of Tobago, where the November severe weather was backed up by what happened with Hurricane Ivan, and then the following year in 2005, the island was also impacted by tropical storm Emily. That would have forced serious changes as to how we do business here in the Republic. That is what gave the change to even NEMA to ODPM. These weather phenomena have been happening. However, governments have been trying to readjust themselves as to how they posture themselves. The whole concept of what you call comprehensive disaster management actually gave birth during that period. We have seen that how the reconstruction process, they were even to harden what was happening in the eastern end of the island between Delaford going into Speyside. Those works stood. Up to today, they have not been disturbed, and this is how it requires. Those are examples when you make the financial input into the reconstruction process. You can really build resilience to some extent. It would have given birth to our, what is now known as the CERT program. This is something that I would have featured at the UN just last week, speaking in South Korea. that, we have done this, we have seen it work for us. It still worked for us in the sense that, as a matter of fact, even though you are talking about prevention, you have to have a particular type of response. This would have given birth to also the decentralization of resources within the communities. Today we have Charlottesville as one of those places that have over $500,000 worth of emergency supplies that are nested within the community for the very sake, if you have to respond, the response sometimes, if it's coming from a centralized point, it does not work in a timely manner. And therefore, we saw the 13th, we saw the changes impacting as to how we conduct business. Sometimes in the big picture, it makes steamers look good, how we are able to respond quickly, but it's because of those layers, those structures, that is affecting how we conduct disaster response during this period. Now, the major challenges that we are seeing is that there is a need for us to quicken what we are doing in regard to the disaster legislation to allow the disaster office to have a better teeth in terms of being able to manage the entire cycle of the disaster management mechanism. It cannot just take the emergency response. You need to look at what is happening with mitigation as to how our infrastructure, our public investment policies, these are areas that we are very conscious of, and I know that the disaster office, the ODPM, has been leading the charge in regards to taking legislation to the cabinet to ensure that the disaster legislation aligned itself with our realities and given the jurisdiction the type of power that can respond to these needs going forward. So I think we are in a good place. What is required is that these processes need to be quickened. It needs to move a bit faster. Climate change onsets are upon us, and therefore we need to respond equally.
So what do you think? What do you think is holding it back? You say the trajectory needs to be moving a little faster. What might be holding it back?
The viscosity by which we conduct business in these parts needs to be faster. What is holding it back is sometimes it's you will know very much well that disaster management is not a very sexy subject. You have, for example, the construct of crime. Every single morning you hear discussions about crime and what is happening with crime. But nobody is understanding that, listen, these weather phenomena that we are having every Monday morning is increasing, and therefore we have to join the banner rhythm as to how we respond to it in a timely manner. So you find that this process has been going on for more than 2 years now. Is that the type of pace? Is that the rhythm we want to work with? I will say strongly no. We have to fasten this process. Up to yesterday in the disaster management meeting, the chief sec indicated that we're going to see subcommittees be established here in Tobago to allow the process of recovery efforts and things like that to be as faster, because it requires, when homes and roofs are dislodged, you have to have mechanism in place that can work as quickly as possible to mirror that action. Otherwise, you're going to have an onset where persons feel dissatisfied with the response from the disaster mechanism happening in the country. So that is one area of it, but
that would be outside of the move to get the legislation in place. So you're talking about a situation in which Tobago will seek to unhinge from the national grid, if we want to call it a grid, to put itself in a better position to respond faster and more effectively.
Yes, certainly. One of the things we discussed, and I know we can agree upon, is that the Tobago space, it is 300 square kilometers, and therefore our small size allow us to do things a bit faster. At the national level, that needs to happen as well, where the legislative work to allow the disaster mechanism to be able to mirror the challenges of the time that process needs to move faster. So if something is before the cabinet, for example, then that piece of paper needs to move fast that we can position itself. There are still players in this theater who will examine the old legislation and say, well, according to the law, you don't have the right to tell me where to build. Where are we with things like CUBIC, which is the Caribbean Uniform Building Code? So persons build almost anywhere they want in the country. Land use policies are ineffective, and therefore, when we look at it from a very scientific position, you recognize that the exposure where people build, where the type of buildings, these are the things that will become sub-hazards during areas of hydrometeorological event and also seismic activity. You know, it can be spelled out. You could do the assessment and you will recognize, if you do the risk assessment, you could see the vulnerability, where the vulnerabilities are in the country. And once we are impacted by these events, this is what is going to happen.
All right, so
and
all
I'm
of that,
saying that, you know, we have to strengthen that going forward.
Right, so all of that having been said, is there a situation in which, so what has happened over the last couple of days, there has been provisioning to meet some of that as eventualities that would be expected? To what extent, what has been set aside to treat with natural hazards such as these will meet the requirements arising out of the landslides and the impact of those things, houses probably collapsing either totally or to some extent? What the allocations that are there to deal with those things, to what extent it will meet this current occurrence?
Well, you have a couple of challenges, but what exists is that, for example, in the Tobago space, there is, I remember since 2002, the Ministry of Finance would have structured what you call a vote 36, which allow for expenditure to go in a particular way where you can respond to these events when they occur, to respond to it in the reconstruction effort. So that being said, that is well in place to allow. There is also CRIF, which is the Caribbean Catastrophic Insurance Facility, that allow a number of us in the Caribbean to be able to respond to these events. In other words, from a government perspective, so that relief can be had as quickly as possible when Caribbean island states are impacted by these events. So these are instruments that exist. These are instruments that will be utilized. The funny thing about it is that the viscosity as to how fast these systems work, as I indicated to you, there is a particular challenge that can exist, especially at the beginning of a financial year, where sometime in the first quarter, funding moves a bit not as fast as you want. So the highlight of this situation, it will allow the policymakers to understand. So when these approaches are made, the emergency funding will be easily available in order to allow the reconstruction process of persons who have been affected to rebuild their lives quickly and get back to normalcy. So I think I've said a mouthful there.
A lot, and a lot of it is, all of it is important and useful. So we part of this note then that you have to work on the viscosity. You have to loosen it up to some extent. Whoever is responsible for doing that, or whatever process is responsible for doing that, right?
Exactly. So what is happening is that in the post-analysis outside of this conversation, there is a need for us to really look at the entire picture as to, are we satisfied with the way in which the process works? Is there areas that we need to tweak? Is the constant the way that we want things to continue? And clearly, based on what I have been viewing in the work that is being put in the draft legislation at this time, certainly the objective is to allow these processes, for example, the areas of communication. You recall many years ago, I think you were part of that construct some many years ago, where we look at the information divisions or the information ministry as to the role that they play in early warning, as to how do you alert the community that something is happening. What happens in that construct? Is it effective? And certainly we would have recognized that in the broadcast industry, the requirement that is currently there is one where we beseech the broadcast industry, which is very much privatized in a particular way, to get on board and carry out certain things in regards to alerting the population of impending events and things like that. Sometimes, according to the type of hazard that you're treating with, the timing could be a bit off, and therefore the message is lost because of the methodology utilized in terms of doing so. So all of these factors are now being looked at, and I'm saying that we need to move forward in a faster way in order to mirror the onset of climate change, because it is happening fast.
Thank you very much. So we have to improve the lubrication. Alan Stewart, Director of the Tobago Emergency Management Agency. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, Andy. Take care. All the best.
All right. We're going to take a break. When we come back, if we have the Newsday poll we shared with you. Now, if not, we move to going down the road on the program. We will be talking with Mr. Anthony Roberts. He's the chairman of the Elections Supervisory Committee of the ruling party, the People's National Movement. Elections up ahead in the party. Stay with us. That and more to come on the program. The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you, what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through? Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing now, Andy.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is it no pressure on Nicholas Ball?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the right and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
Saturday, November 5th, Shore Park, Tobago. It's Million Laughs Caribbean Comedy Commerce, the mega laugh festival to end the Tobago Carnival season, featuring Tobago's finest in folklore and musical entertainment, together with some of the Caribbean's top comedians, Larry Joseph, Daryl the Saint Mendoza, Dolores, Alan the Entertainer, Handsome Sun, Mako Media, and more. Get your ticket specials available on Island E-Tickets and various outlets nationwide, or visit the Million Laughs handles for more info. It's Comedy Commerce in Tobago, a wee kind of commerce.
Welcome back to the program. Our guest now is Mr. Anthony Roberts. He's been a member of local government in Samuel Laverty Regional Corporation. He's been a cabinet minister. He's been in national government. He's gone back now to being chairman of the Election Supervisory Committee of the ruling party, the People's National Movement. So he's in charge of the exercise that will happen over the 2 days, November 26 and 27. Elections in the People's National Movement. Good to have you. So let's talk about what your role and function is.
Thank you very much, Andy, and I am happy to be here to communicate information to the national community and to members of the People's National Movement. Yes, I have been elected as the chairman of the Election Supervisory Committee of the People's National Movement, and our role really is to supervise the elections exercise in the People's National Movement.
So,
yes, Sandy?
Right. Yes. What does that entail?
Oh, yes, it entails the total management of the operations of the elections, and that is to ensure that everything is conducted in a fair manner and to the benefit of the People's National Movement.
What would prevent it from being conducted fairly? How do you ensure that? What is the process by which your team will ensure fairness and I'd probably say transparency?
Yes, and transparent as well. There is a code of conduct for all members who are participating in the elections. And members are advised to adhere strictly to the code of conduct, which entails that they should carry themselves in a particular manner and they should not be attacking unnecessarily other candidates and or their family and so on. This code of conduct they will all sign on to.
Well, how do contestants campaign in internal party elections? How do you canvass? How do contestants or candidates canvass?
There is a listing of registered party members, and they are entitled to reach out to the membership in the respective constituencies. So it is simple. It is up to them. They will have meetings. They would canvass face-to-face and solicit the support of the entire membership of Trinidad and Tobago.
So party groups, I mean, people can meet with party groups and constituency groups and so on. Yeah.
They can meet with the constituency groups, they can meet with the party groups, they can have their team reach out and canvass similarly to that of a general elections.
Yeah, and what are some of the don'ts? You know, talk about the do's and the don'ts. What are some of the don'ts in campaigning such as this?
Well, as I indicated to you, they ought not to malign and try to denigrate the character of other members. We all have to live together thereafter.
Yeah.
Remember, it's just an election.
He says it's just an election.
Yes.
But say what you want. Sometimes bitterness arises because somebody is contesting against somebody, whatever the position is, and you have to find ways to demonstrate that this person it doesn't deserve to continue in this position. How do you do that respectfully, and how do you do that within the confines of what is allowed in the party?
We understand very much that it is a very, very emotional exercise, but people have to be responsible in the discharge of their responsibility. Yeah, if you want to represent the party at this level, you must demonstrate clearly that you have the kind of mettle to be able to do so, and not do anything at all that would be inimical to the functioning of the People's National Movement.
So somebody is saying that the point I made in the introduction to the discussion, that a general election in Trinidad and Tobago is conducted in a day, and before the close of that day, in terms of before next morning, you know who the winner is and who the winners are. Why does it take 2 days to conduct an election within the party?
We are ensuring that every registered member of the People's National Movement, wherever you are in Trinidad and Tobago, you must have the opportunity. And Andy, it is not 2 days. It is on the 26th and the 27th. And persons who have not had an opportunity to cast their vote, you will be given an opportunity to cast your vote on the convention day, which is the 4th of December. So actually it's 3 days.
Right, it said it talks about a 2-day exercise that centers in across the country on November 26th and 27th.
And there you would have the opportunity to vote within your constituency. Polling booths would be set up in each constituency, and you would have the opportunity to vote at the level of the constituency on the 26th and 27th of November. And if for whatever reason a party member is unable to cast their vote and you're entitled to vote and you wish to vote at the convention, you also would be given the opportunity.
So the voting can take place if people don't get the chance to vote on the 26th and the 27th of November, you can vote at the convention?
At the convention. And at the convention, coming to the end of the convention, we will do what we can to ensure that the results are given out at the convention.
And that is widely agreed by membership, or I imagine whether everybody agrees with it or not, it is sanctioned by is it the General Council? Which organization has the last call in terms of what goes on?
The General Council, yes, the General Council sanctioned that approach.
Yeah. How do you respond to the notions of the cynical who say that this is, and not necessarily exclusive to the PNM, but these internal elections really are sham exercises, and they don't really...
I can assure you, in the People's National Movement, we treat our internal exercise very serious. It is not a sham. We have elections, and they are contested by members who wish to participate in at that level of the party. We have 16 positions that are up for grabs at this time, which includes the political leader, the chairman and vice chairman, lady vice chairman of the party, and all the other offices. 16 offices would be up to members.
Yeah, you have deputy political leaders. You have you know, party organizers and organizers.
No, the deputy political leaders are not recommended to the General Council by the political leader. So they are not contested.
Okay, so that is out of it. Deputy political leaders are...
Yeah, the treasurer, education officer, public relations officer, social media officer, labor relations officer, elections officer, welfare officer, youth officer, and operation officer.
Yeah. Let's talk about the role of the welfare officer. What is the role and function of the welfare officer in a political party?
Right, to look after the needs of the membership. Right, person who may require some kind of social assistance or whatever little assistance that you could provide to members of the party, that is the responsibility of the welfare officer, to look after the welfare of the membership.
And what does that mean, looking after the welfare of the membership?
As I just indicated, if there might be some social need, and the party can assist a member, they will do so through the welfare officer.
And the election involves people voting as individuals, right?
Yeah, one man, one vote.
Yeah.
Right? That is a decision of the People's National Movement on approximately 2 elections now. We have been going that way. The party decided that is how you would elect its officers to serve the party.
And you find that it is an improvement from what used to happen before with the procedure before?
Yeah, well, it improved on the democracy within the party. We are democratically run, and it is one way to demonstrate the democracy, and I must congratulate the current political leader, because he is the person who initiated the one man, one vote and insisted that this is the way that the People's National Movement, we went into convention and ensure that this has become part of the operations of the People's National Movement.
Well, I mean, so he is the political leader. He rose to that position after what I would consider a very contentious challenge that he had mounted against the person who he displaced as political leader. And there was a lot of contention at the time. You think that those days are over if people contest against each other in the party, when people contest against each other in the party, such that you're going to have this time again? So he, as political leader, is under challenge from a member who had been in the cabinet with him and so on and so on.
But I don't think, Andy, it was contentious to the point that it created that kind of acrimony, and so Mr. Manning moved on, and then that created the vacancy, and Dr. Rowley made himself available.
No, I'm talking about when Mr. Manning was alive and well and was political leader back in the 90s, and Dr. Rowley mounted a significant challenge to him, and it seemed as though that was sort of frowned upon by a lot of people.
Well, yes, again, elections are very emotional, and people would have the person that they would want to support. But you would recall that thereafter, Dr. Rowley remained as a member of the cabinet in a People's National Movement and worked side by side, mounted the same platform with Mr. Manning, even though he contested against him the leadership of the People's National Movement, and that's fine. That is what the party is all about.
Yeah, and even though the Mr. Manning at the time said in the Parliament, you know how he described him, when at least he was accusing him of being that way when he didn't get his way in the cabinet and so on and so on. So there was some animosity among them, wherever it came from, whether it was because they didn't see eye to eye on some matters, but that happened.
But I would say that is a personal feeling of the then political leader and prime minister. But that didn't prevent us from working with each other and ensuring that the business of the party and business of the country took place.
All right, we're going to take a break, and we want you to stay with us. So we come back in a moment. We'll be talking with Mr. Anthony Roberts. He's chairman of the Elections Supervisory Committee in the People's National Movement, getting ready for party elections. Stay with us.
In a hurry, check those guys' hardware. 42 Front Street, Woodbrook. Call 750-7244. Open Monday to Saturday, 8 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. Sundays and public holidays at 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m.
Come travel with us as we explore Diwali across the globe. Diwali is celebrated in many countries worldwide. But do you know the traditions and practices of each nation? From Guyana to Australia, WESN presents Diwali Passport, October 3rd to October 23rd, with replays on October 24th. It's Diwali Passport, a WESN exclusive.
Let your voice be heard. Call Madam Fix-It on WESN, the only place that effectively helps you with your woes. Having problems getting onto government agencies, water woes, NIS and pension problems, potholes, and much, much more. Call me, Madam Fix-It, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, right here on WESN. Let me fix it for you.
Welcome back to the program. We're talking with Mr. Anthony Roberts. He's a former member of parliament, a former chairman of a regional corporation. He's now in charge of the election exercise for the People's National Movement, going into party elections in a couple of weeks. We could say November 26th and 27th. Nomination day is October 10th. So let's talk a little bit about what has to happen on nomination day. What is the hurdle that has to be crossed for people to be inside in terms of their contest?
A person who is interested in contesting any of the position will consult with the respective party groups throughout Trinidad and Tobago, and there you would take to the party your letter of consent for them requesting their nomination. And the nomination papers will be submitted to the office of the People's National Movement no later than 4 p.m. on the 10th of this month, October, so that we process the papers and provide information as to who are the candidates. All members of the party are entitled to make themselves available.
Yeah, to what extent are there any rulings against, say, people voting en bloc, so that a constituency or a party group may decide to support a candidate or B candidate and so on? The rules don't address those things.
No, they're entitled to, and there is provision in the process for that in terms of the nomination.
Yeah. Talk with us a little bit about your committee, the supervisory committee, and how do you get going? And you get going at what point?
We are in place already. We were selected and approved by the central executive of the party. We have had one meeting since our appointment to the position, and we will be meeting on Sunday, of this Sunday coming, and to continue to prepare and plan for the elections. Monday, as you have indicated, Monday 10th of October will be the nomination day, and we expect all the nominations would be in by 4 p.m. on Monday evening, so that we can process and make it public. As we promise the transparency and impartiality as we go through the process to ensure that the elections take place professionally within the People's National Movement.
Yeah, and can you tell us something about your committee? You're chairman of the supervisory committee.
Yes, a number of members put together from the People's National Movement with different expertise to ensure that we are able to run the elections professionally. So you would have persons who would be strong in IT, persons who would be strong with the social media, in finance, and all the areas that are necessary to make sure that the election is conducted in a professional manner.
You think, and this might be a personal view I'm trying to get at, you think that when somebody decides to go up against the political leader, that makes for, that re-energizes the process, or it creates?
Yes, it creates a level of excitement, right? You know, as I indicated before, people will be emotional and very passionate about the persons they want to support. We encourage that. It is open to any member who wish to challenge another person within the party, and we encourage that kind of involvement, so that there is no intention to debar anyone from from making themselves available. And we look forward to it.
Yeah, and you say the rules of the game don't allow, or they disallow people from sort of either as candidates or as supporters of candidates for going about the place bad talking their
Yes,
challengers or their...
It prevents that kind of behavior. You can campaign, but it must never get to the personality. Yeah? Okay. You can come with your plans and your programs and what you would want to do for the party, how you would want to see the party operate. But in terms of the personality, we should stay away from that kind of behavior.
But it doesn't outlaw somebody making a point as to how and why this person, a candidate A or B in any position, may have been ineffective and so on.
Once you do it with respect, yeah, this is not to come and attack a person's personality, and this is what we will not tolerate.
All right. Well, we want to thank you very much, Mr. Roberts, for talking with us on this issue. It's always, sometimes it's easier said than done, but we'll see what happens once again. Elections in the People's National Movement. And we part on this note that the elections we're seeing here are coming before the putting in place of the arrangements for the next local government election, right?
Well, I can't say when the local government elections will be. That is the call of the Prime Minister. And I am certain that he will do it when it's convenient and correct to do it for the people of Trinidad and Tobago.
Right.
But as a political organization, we are prepared to contest any elections in Trinidad and Tobago.
But it says that the internal elections would put the party on a better footing to contest the local government elections. That is neither here nor there, or is that the case?
We continue to fix our business as a political party.
All right.
And to make ourselves ready for any eventuality.
All right. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much, Andy.
All right. We're going to take a break. We have news coming up on the other side of that. Dr. Asante Vanwes Charles LeBlanc, head of the Cancer Society in Trinidad and Tobago. As we speak, we're talking about breast cancer. In particular, we'll get to her on the other side of where we are now. Stay with us.
Here's your WESN News on the Hour. I am Denise Sinclair. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. Local government minister says all resources dispatched to assist in flood aid. ODPM calls on citizens to be alert even as rainfall subsides. Man gunned down in Price Mart car park. And internationally, Hong Kong offers 500,000 free air tickets to tempt tourists back. Now for the details. Rural Development and Local Government Minister Faris Al-Rawi says all agencies are on the ground assisting flood victims. There have been 135 reports of flooding since Wednesday and major landslides.
Tunapuna Piarco Regional Corporation had 95 of those events, and Sangre Grande Regional Corporation had 23 of those events alone. In terms of landslips, we've had 30 landslips, all of which are being managed. I wish to stop and compliment all of the regional corporations, and in particular CPEP, that worked straight throughout the night, and all of the coordination happened via members of parliament on all parts of Trinidad, that is both opposition and government.
The minister also gave an update on the number of resources distributed to affected areas.
I can confirm that as of now, we've distributed over 2,437 sandbags. I want to remind you that to date, in the last 2 occasions that I've appeared before you, we distributed well over 50,000 sandbags. So this is a cumulative addition of resources. In the landslip areas, we have positioned assets right across the north coast, and we're warning Trinidad and Tobago that the soil is saturated.
Meanwhile, ODPM CEO Rodney Smart is calling on citizens to keep their guards up even though rains may have subsided. Speaking during a special conference, he said there's a very real possibility that the water will continue to rise.
In many of our communities, rain isn't falling. And I want to start by asking our citizens to please do not become complacent. Do not become complacent because the rain has stopped. We have been told by the Met Services that we are at the present time on a yellow level alert. We are also told that we are on an orange riverine alert, and therefore it means that at any point in time, the rain can begin pouring again.
The murder toll continues to rise with another gun-related killing. In Mausika, a man was gunned down at the compound of Price Mart. The incident occurred in broad daylight while shoppers bustled through the car park. This killing took the murder toll to 453 for the year thus far. Meanwhile, a man was also shot and killed in Sealots. He has been identified as Josiah Greenidge. A motive for his killing is yet to be ascertained. On to international news now. Hong Kong attracted around 56 million visitors a year before the pandemic, and now the popular destination is taking significant steps to win tourists back after over 2 years of some of the world's toughest travel restrictions. Just days after dropping its long-standing mandatory hotel quarantine requirement, Hong Kong has confirmed plans to give away 500,000 airline tickets in a bid to boost tourism. The move, first announced 2 years ago, was confirmed by a spokesperson from the Airport Authority Hong Kong, which said that the 500,000 tickets worth around $254.8 million would go to global visitors along with residents. Well, that was your news to the hour on WESN. I am Denise St. Clair. Thanks for watching.
Saturday, November 5th, Shore Park, Tobago. It's Million Laughs Caribbean Comedy Commerce, the mega laugh festival to end the Tobago Carnival season, featuring Tobago's finest in folklore and musical entertainment, together with some of the Caribbean's top comedians, Larry Joseph, Daryl the Saint Mendoza, Dolores, Alan the Entertainer, Handsome Sun, Mako Media, and more. Get your ticket specials available on Island E-Tickets and various outlets nationwide, or visit the Million Laughs handles for more info. It's Comedy Commerce in Tobago, a wee kind of commerce.
Well, welcome back to the program. Up ahead, our discussion on cancer awareness and treatment as we observe Cancer Awareness Month in Trinidad and Tobago. We're talking with Dr. Santé Van West Charles de Blanc. But before we get to that, let's take a look around the region a little bit, and we go to Guyana, where she is from. Well, not necessarily she was born in Cuba, but is a Guyanese national. But the fact is, we want to talk about news developments there this morning, and we're looking at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation. They have reiterated Guyana's firm commitment to the peaceful resolution of the border controversy with neighboring Venezuela. We have a report from News Source Guyana.
Venezuela is not too pleased with statements made by President Irfan Ali during his recent UN General Assembly speech and has dispatched a communique with its dissatisfaction. During his recent address to the UN General Assembly in New York, the president said the government of Guyana will make the most of every diplomatic tool for a peaceful settlement of the border controversy as set out in the UN Charter. The head of state said Guyana's territorial sovereignty is being challenged and threatened by Venezuela. In response, the Venezuelan government deemed the president's speech to be a misrepresentation. Guyana currently has Venezuela before the International Court for a final judicial settlement of the controversy. Venezuela continues to push for a return to the UN Good Offices process, but that process ended when Guyana moved to the International Court following several years of the Good Offices process bearing no fruit. In response to the Venezuelan communique, the Guyana Ministry of Foreign Affairs said Guyana will remain true to the peaceful processes and denies any effort to depart from them. The Guyana government maintains that the International Court has already declared that it has jurisdiction to hear and determine the matter. The Foreign Affairs Ministry has cautioned Guyanese not to share Venezuelan propaganda and misinformation on the controversy, which may all be part of the neighboring country's campaign to continue claiming Guyanese territory.
All right, so we go to Jamaica now, where a member of parliament lamented the lack of potable water in her constituency while blasting the previous representatives, whom she has noted were all men.
A turmoil of immediacy. How the Jamaica Society for Industrial Security is describing last Friday's court ruling in the case of the National Housing Trust versus Marksman Limited.
At a press conference on Friday, the Society said the ruling will impact the entire security guard industry, and while they do not have a problem with it, the instant implementation is causing challenges. The Supreme Court ruled that as at midnight September 23, security guards were to be treated as employees and not independent contractors. It was a part win for the NHT, which was seeking to have marksmen pay over employers' contributions. But the implications are far-reaching. It now means, among other things, changes to the work week for security guards down from 60 hours to 40.
Therefore, we now have to pay the overtime rate on any work done in excess of 40 hours. The security officers are now entitled to paid vacation, 10 days paid sick leave. There comes into the equation the whole matter of notice pay redundancy, the likes.
And so, the cost of providing security services will increase by roughly 50% immediately. In other words, if it cost $10 to provide security services before September 23, it will now cost $15, which will have further implications.
So those changes in the labor relations and the labor agreement with the officers results in a, call it 50%, a rounded off figure of 50% increase in the cost of our labor, which has to be passed on to the consumers of security services.
Lieutenant Commander George Overton, who is president of the Jamaica Society for Industrial Security, stressed that the society, which consists of 28 companies, does not have a fundamental problem with the ruling. But
the challenge that we have is that, and we did caution before, that the court ruling would be immediate and definite. So as of the 23rd, which was the date of the delivery of the judgment, at 1 minute past midnight on that morning, that ruling became effective. And that is what has thrown the industry into turmoil.
Thrown into turmoil because the increased cost is impacting security companies already.
We started to incur costs that had not been negotiated with our clients. We start to incur expenses that were not provided for in our contract pricing. And we also had to change immediately what our relationship was with our security officers. There's no time or room to negotiate our position. The court is definitive and final. So that's the challenge. It's not that we have a problem, it's a challenge.
And so, the JSIS shared 6 proposals they've already put to the government to help avert disruption to the sector. One of the proposals is for the government to enact legislation to change the work week from 40 to 60 hours by way of an amendment to the Minimum Wage Act. This would eliminate the additional costs associated with overtime. But President of the Jamaica Confederation of Trade Unions, Helene Davis White, does not support that aspect of the proposal.
It can't be that the security guard industry is different from everybody else and that the security guard industry expects that these changes will be made to accommodate the industry. The security guard industry has to accept that they need to operate within the context of the existing framework as regards hours of work in Jamaica.
Mrs. Davis White says the establishment of a joint industrial council is needed to determine the best way forward.
All right, so we come now to our discussion with Dr. Asante Van with Charles LeBlanc. She's currently the head of the chair of the Cancer Society in Trinidad and Tobago. It's Cancer Awareness Month as well as it's Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and this is an area of this ailment that she's put a lot of focus on. We're told that her grandmother died of cancer, and as a result of which she decided to concentrate more for persons affected with this disease. And she began working with the Trinidad and Tobago Cancer Society some years ago, since she's been living in Trinidad, and she's currently chair now. She's described as a Cuban-born Guyanese national, a mother of 5, a wife, a doctor, a clinical densitometrist, and medical herbalist. She uses herbs as part of her treatments of people with these ailments. Good to have you.
Thank you. Good morning, and how are you?
Good, very good, thanks. It's always good to see you and be speaking with you. Well, let's understand, what is a densitometrist? Let's start with that.
A densitometrist. So that means I do clinical management and diagnosis of osteoporosis.
Diagnosis of osteoporosis.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Is that something that affects women more than men? I don't know why I think so.
Osteoporosis affects women more than men, but men after 70 should be looking at their bone health, and also men who are cancer survivors who've had a lot of chemo, radiation. We also look at their bone health and their risk for osteoporosis. Women, it's mostly tied into our hormonal transition, menopause, and it's based on our also our ancestry in terms of our risk for osteoporosis, as well as being cancer survivors or using a lot of steroids and so forth for both sexes.
Yeah, it says here that breast cancer is the most common type of non-skin cancer among women in the United States, accounting for 15% of all new cases. How terrible is it in Trinidad and Tobago or in the Caribbean? Let's deal with the Caribbean. How do you compare? How do we compare?
The statistics in Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean region mirrors those of the United States and the world. Breast cancer is the most common cancer in women, and also the top cancer that causes death by cancer in women.
Yeah, it says here the most common form of breast cancer is ductal carcinoma, which begins in the cells of the ducts. Yeah.
Correct.
Tell us what that is.
So ductal carcinoma is basically starting from inside of the breast duct tissue, and therefore this is why it's important for us to always have do our screening, starting from women doing their self-breast examination to then doing your annual clinical breast examination with your physician, your family doctor, and of course from the age of 35 to 40 based on your family history as well. And it's very individualized in most cases. You start your mammograms and then possibly your ultrasounds depending on the mammogram results.
So you start with self-examination, then you go to mammogram, and then you go to ultrasound.
We do our self-breast examination every month, 5 days after a period has stopped. So every month a woman should examine their breast at home. And, we tell people to do it in the shower, make sure you understand how your breast is feeling, understand if you're feeling anything new, any new lumps, etc. every year during your annual checkup, you should have a clinical breast examination. And every year, once you're 40 years old, we start with our mammogram.
Yeah, so a lump may or may not be malignant, as you're calling it, but you have to find out.
Exactly. I love your question. So you may feel a lump, and then based on once a woman feels a lump in her breast, she should go to the doctor. Once she goes to the physician will examine, discern if the lump is there, do a proper clinical breast examination, and then workup should be started. Based on the woman's age, we may start with a breast ultrasound, because we have to look at the whole picture in terms of family history, risk factors, and so forth. So generally with a lump, you may start with a breast examination depending on what's happening with that patient. And based on that ultrasound, you may see that it's a simple cyst, you may see that it's a fibroadenoma, and these are all benign or non-cancerous lesions of the breast. So a lump doesn't have to mean cancer, but a lump is something to alert you to go to your physician, right, to get it checked out.
Yeah, and it said that the most common form of breast cancer is this ductal carcinoma. It begins in the cells of the ducts. You see a lot of advertisements sometimes on TV and so on about people promoting their systems of examination and finding out and talking about how often people are misdiagnosed and live in a false sense of security. Those things are just ads and promotions selling one kind of approach to the other, or what's the truth about that?
Well, I think it's important to understand that every screening tool has a sensitivity and a specificity. So at this time, our golden screening tool for breast cancer is the mammogram, and then we tie it in with the ultrasound. Now, nothing is 100% sensitive or specific, but it definitely is, along with everything I've mentioned as a screening package. It's definitely a way to have early detection. So when a woman, I always tell my patients, for example, if you feel a lump and you're not feeling well or something is niggling in your mind and you do your mammogram and you do your ultrasound and it's saying that it's normal, but you're still concerned, there's nothing wrong with a second opinion. Do you understand?
Yes.
You may have misdiagnoses in any disease, but that's not always the case. And it's important to understand that that is why we are promoting screening. Because if you do your annual screening, then you get early detection. If you don't do annual screening and it's just a one-off mammogram, that could be leading to easily being misdiagnosed. But if you're consistent with your annual screening, your annual checkups, looking at your lifestyle, and all of these things brought together in a holistic manner, then you definitely are going to decrease the chances of misdiagnosis.
Yeah, and is this what you're doing now is part of what it says that you work to change the landscape of cancer screening and education in Trinidad and Tobago?
Definitely, because you have heard the tag phrase, equitable access to health care. You heard that with the COVID-19 vaccine. What we in the Trinidad and Tobago Cancer Society are aiming to do and do all the time, day by day, is educate and promote awareness and advocate for cancer patients in Trinidad and Tobago and for the society as a whole when it comes to lifestyle, because cancer is a lifestyle disease. But most importantly, it's about allowing for equitable access to screening services, state-of-the-art screening services at a very, very low price, right? And this is us trying to ensure that everyone has access. And thanks to our corporate partnerships, we're even able at times to offer free screening. But it's based on our partnerships and different promotions. But we will not stop and will not at all give up in this fight against cancer. We will always ensure that the population understands the importance of screening, and we go out into areas so that we can screen those who may not be able to come into us in our clinics. And we won't stop at all. And we will support all sectors that will aid us in promoting and assisting with screening to all of the population.
Why is there this insistence on having equity? Is it because, what is it? It's people's level of understanding of education, people's remoteness from centers of activity, or it's just, in some cases, people's inability to afford?
Exactly. You mentioned all the factors. Education, being able to get to a screening center, availability of screening tools, and affordability. And that is where we advocate and we come in. Now, the public sector, the Ministry of Health of Trinidad and Tobago, has screening tools afforded to the public, and it's free. But as we all know, and you can imagine, that we have an overburdened healthcare system, but much more so now, not even post, as we're transitioning through this pandemic. It's worldwide, the issue of affordability of screening services. And therefore, we have to push and advocate and not let people forget to screen for cancer, but also make it affordable and equitable access to everyone that needs it.
Yeah, I want to get to the part where it says that you have a blended kind of approach. You work with herbs and Eastern and Western medical systems and so on. But before we go there, let me just ask you, when you say we have what is the evidence of, what does it look like when you say we have an overburdened healthcare system?
When I say that is that when we look at our primary healthcare system, in the public sector, we can see where there's some deficiencies, and the government is working on it. There's no doubt about it, and it happens worldwide. I mean, it's not just Trinidad and Tobago. So the system is burdened, but that doesn't mean it can't be fixed or remedied. I think it's just a matter of us working together, both public and private sector, to ensure that systems are improved.
And tell us a little bit about your, I would call it activism, in trying to get that improvement and in trying to get people who ought to be on board to continue to provide assistance and facilities in these regards.
Well, again, it's continuously speaking to corporate partners, continuously liaising and advocating with the Ministry of Health, because we're a major advocate for cancer in Trinidad and Tobago. And we are pushing, we advocate with insurance companies as well to make their coverage for screening adequate, So there are different sectors that we will advocate and speak with so that we can really and truly put our money where our mouth is and walk the walk, and not just have lip service, and make sure that we continue this fight against cancer through screening, early detection, education about lifestyles, because there's small changes that we can make that are so impactful when it comes to all of our NCDs.
How does living a healthy lifestyle, what does it look like in terms of putting a constraint on the development of such ailments and illnesses?
In terms of what?
A healthy lifestyle.
What's a healthy lifestyle like?
In terms of trying to guard against
against any NCD, any non-communicable chronic disease?
Yes.
How long do you have? So diet, eating properly, a balanced diet, exercise, proper sleep health, stress coping, ensuring there's no excessive alcohol intake, no smoking, no vaping. Those are the pillars when we speak about healthy lifestyle. You can imagine trying to maintain balance in this world that is hectic and seems like a rat wheel all the time. And it's difficult, but what it has to be is, as the word says, lifestyle. It has to be something you're comfortable with. And you have to do it I recommend to all patients, look at your life, make the small changes slowly, make sure it's something you will continue, so it's not something that the doctor enforced on you. So when I say, try a low-sodium diet, it doesn't mean that you're going to eat bland food for the rest of your life. There are options. If I say decrease your sugar intake, it doesn't mean no sugar at all. It means look at the quality of sugars that you're putting into your body. When we say look at your fatty content of your food, look at the fried food content. So there are different aspects to it. But I will always promote eating as local as possible, eating what is in season, looking at the quality of food we put into our bodies. We have to look at what pesticides may or may not be used in our agro industry, in our country, and in our region. We do have to, as a nation and as a region, cooperate, and our CARICOM leaders are speaking of this. I hope they follow through. But they have to continue to support our regional agro-processing and our regional industry, not for economic reasons only, but for the health of the population of the region. Because without the health of the population, we do not have any wealth at all, right? So it's very important that we also call on our CARICOM leaders to not only talk a very good talk, but to walk it with us, to put it into action, to activate those rules and those laws and those different, you go to these big meetings and they tell you all these things, but then is it enforced? You understand?
Yeah.
And that is where we come in, where we're going to constantly and consistently push by ourselves and with as partners with the NCD Alliance to push for healthier diets, healthier lifestyles, push for activity, push for proper balance when it comes to our workplace and everything, because all of that holistically will contribute to preventing NCDs.
Thank you very much. That's a couple of mouthful. Very well.
Yes, I tell you how long you have.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Dr. Asante Manuel Charles Alban, thank you very much, the chair of the Trinidad and Tobago Cancer Society. We'll take a break, come back before we wrap it up. Stay with us.
In a hurry, check those guys' hardware. 42 Front Street, Woodbrook. Call 750-7244. Open Monday to Saturday, 8 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. Sundays and public holidays at 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m.
That will do it for this edition of the program. We thank you for watching. We tell you can stay with us here at AM Prime and WESN-CC. You could get in touch with us here. Send your emails to WESAMPrime and WESN-CC and all our social media platforms as well. Well, in half an hour or so, the guys will come in for the day's edition of Talking Point. I'll be back moments from now with today's edition, this week's edition of 10 Questions to Stay Where You Are. I'm Andy Johnson. Thanks for watching thus far.
WESN. Diwali Passport, brought to you by Benjamin Moore.